Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as Doc V, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast for those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without a box by exposing you to global thought leaders as my guest today, and change agents and legacy builders across industries on how exactly they successfully define their path in life and business to profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And the Define Your Path podcast is no different. It all starts in the mind. Will you be the captain or the crew is the question. Folks, I am so excited for you to meet my spotlight today. She is absolutely magnificent, and the area she works in is truly unique. My guest is Joanna Rawbone. So let me tell you a little bit about her, okay? So Joanna has always known that she was different from peers, friends, and even her family. And in her 30s, she discovered how she was an introvert. So some of you might be wondering, okay, so what's different? Wait, I'm going to tell you more. With more than 3 decades working as a trainer and consultant, with thousands of international clients, Joanna saw just how problematic this bias is within organizations, negatively impacting employee engagement, retention, and productivity, as well as the well-being of employees. Through her business, Flourishing Introverts, I love that name, she champions the cause of introverts and promotes positive action to address the extraversion bias, and there is such a thing. Through her one-on-one and group coaching programs, Joanna Rawbone enables individuals to recognize their natural strengths so they can fulfill their potential without pretending to be something they are not. And that is super important. Joanna, you are doing a tremendous work. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Doc V.
I love it. I love it. And I believe you're my first international guest since we've launched the podcast. So thank you so much. Coming from the southern part of the beautiful United Kingdom, we look forward to hearing your story and how you faced your fears to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and soul purpose. So in this podcast, we like to keep it simple. So I'm going to remind the audience, we have 2 questions and then we just kind of riff on those 2 questions. So the first one is, how have you defined your path and how do you help others define theirs? So Joanna, you have the spotlight.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. And it's been a very long and sort of tortuous route for me, really, defining my path. And I'm 64 now, and I must admit, when I got into my 50s, I began to wonder whether I was ever going to really understand my true path. And all of a sudden, I got there in about 2018, so 4 years ago. I'd just coming up to 60. So one of the things that I want to share is it's never too late. It really doesn't matter how old you are. But as you mentioned in the introduction, I always knew I was different, and I faced a lot of ridicule for that in my early years, both as a child and when I was fairly early on in my career. And eventually I found something I love doing, which is training, coaching, and consulting, and as a facilitator of both small and large groups. Once I got there, I knew I'd found what I wanted to do basically for the rest of my life. And I was working with many international organizations right around the globe. And there was one thing that I always noticed wherever I worked, and that was that the quiet ones, wherever I was, were the ones who were overlooked and undervalued. They kept their head down, they were doing great work, but they didn't get the opportunities that the more outspoken, the more outgoing people got. And I finally got mad enough because, as you've mentioned, I found out in my 30s that I was an introvert. So quite late, although I'm now working with people who it's until their 40s and 50s before they find out that they're
Yes.
not broken or in need of fixing. They're just an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in a world that's biased towards extroverts. We operate in businesses that are biased towards the extrovert ideal, whoever decided that that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have spent, most of us, especially when we're coming to my age, decades, and for the people younger, years of feeling not enough, because the feedback that we consistently get is be different, push yourself forward, speak up more, don't join in with everyone. You know, there's always be not who you are, not how you are, but be different. So I love your question about facing the fears and kind of to love the skin I'm in, because the skin I had to learn to love was my introverted skin. When I found out I was an introvert, I did the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which many people will be familiar with.
Yes.
And there's that one little paragraph that describes you before you dig into the detail. And in that one paragraph, I thought, somebody really understands me. Somebody knows who I am. And I know it's sometimes held in somewhat kind of bad light, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. But for many of us introverts, it's the first time we go, you mean there are other people like me?
Yes.
And that is so life affirming, actually. But, and there is a big but here, when I found out in my 30s that what made me different was that I was an introvert, I looked around all of my peers and colleagues. By now, I was well into the training and coaching world. I was still working with a large multinational organization at that point. And I looked around at all my successful peers, and they were all extroverts, or they were behaving like extroverts. So I then made a foolish decision, I now know, but I didn't know any better at that stage, which was to pretend to be more extroverted in order to fit in and get on. So I would develop a much larger personality. I would, really project who I was.
Yes.
And as a result, I went home absolutely exhausted. Because unless people are aware, and I think it's worth just defining this, the real difference between introverts and extroverts is where we get our energy from and what drains our mental and physical and social batteries.
Yes.
So an introvert, and it was Jung who originally defined this, an introvert looks inwards and gets their energy from within. An extravert, and his original term was with an A, not an O, an extravert uses the energy that they pull from the external world. So they recharge by social interactions, by active experiences and change. So what drains the introvert is what charges the extrovert. And there is some of the tension. So the reality is that I can behave any way I want to, but I have to be fully charged to do it. And I can only do it for so long. I can be the life and soul of the party, provided I've recharged my batteries, I'm ready for it. But when that moment comes, when I feel my battery draining, I'm out of there as quick as you like. I don't even say goodbye sometimes. I'm just gone. And you're laughing like you know people like that.
I am like that.
Perfect. So that's the only real difference. And yet there are so many things that are conflated with introversion. So I've been called a snob, arrogant, stuck up, boring, dull as, and I won't finish the last bit, but I've really gone through it. So learning to love my introverted skin was something that took me a while to do. And it was in 2018 that I finally got mad enough at seeing people like me who had great potential and were doing great work, just being passed over, and people saying, well, they lack ambition because they weren't pushing themselves forward. They lack ambition. No, not true. Most introverts like me hope our good work will speak for itself. We don't believe that we need to shout about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And of course, in this day and age, it doesn't work. No. So it took me a while to define my path. And now I'm combining my training, coaching, facilitation, consulting skills with a niche that lights me up day in, day out, which is enabling other introverts to flourish, which is enabling them to show up authentically, which is enabling them to find joy in life by being who they really are without apology, without thinking they need to pretend to be something they're not, like I did for a couple of decades, actually.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I tell you, you just said so much there that I want to jump into. That was powerful and so enlightening and insightful. And, you know, my giggles were because I can totally relate. I taught myself how to be an extrovert, but I am truly an introvert.
Yeah.
And, you know, perhaps it was, you know, my studies in the performing arts, you know, I'm sure that's what it was. But you're right. It's so exhausting when you're on. Mm-hmm. When you're on stage, you know, but when we're operating in our passion and our purpose, you know, we love it, but really freeing the mind. You said something that I thought it was so ironic, how people told you to be something different, right?
Yeah.
But that something, what they were really trying to tell you was like, you're not normal. You need to be normal.
Yeah.
And introverts are who they are. And it's not about normalcy. It's really about being different, thinking without that box and being who you are.
Absolutely. And we're now starting to recognize that introversion is an element of a neurodiversity. We are wired differently. It's not that we choose this. We are actually wired differently. The functional neuroimaging studies show that the brains of introverts and extroverts light up differently when they're stimulated in the same way. Mm-hmm. So with so many organizations being so proud of the, you know, what they're doing for the DEI agenda, mm-hmm. actually, we need to recognize that this is an aspect of neurodiversity, and don't crow about it until you've taken this into account, because up to 50% of any population identifies as an introvert. In the UK, the figures are about 40%, 48% of us identify as an introvert. In the US, it's about 51 to 52%.
Wow.
Now, from my perspective, looking across the pond, the US population in general, huge generalization, seems to be more extroverted to me, which means that there are even more people pretending to be something they're not in the US than there are in the UK.
Yes.
And that has to stop. That has to stop.
So right. And that is a very astute observation. I love the thought of attaching this to the DEI initiative, because that is a huge thing here in the US. And for those who don't know what that is, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
I love that thought. So let's talk about how you're helping people define their path, or if there is, if you do want to continue the conversation on how you define your path, please feel free.
I may flip-flop between the two because they're almost inseparable, actually, because the more I'm helping people find their path, the more it's crystallizing my own thoughts and understanding and my own thought leadership. So
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, the two are inseparable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What I realized is that because, like me, so many end up feeling not okay, believing that there's something wrong with them, that they're broken or in need of fixing, it can damage self-esteem. It can really sort of take the wind out of our sails, damage our confidence, and mean that, to use Marianne Williamson's phrase, we play small.
Yes.
And just because we are quiet does not mean that we need to play small. We have so many gifts and talents that this world needs, right now we need more people to listen, and to listen not just to what's being said, but to what's not being said, to notice those things.
Yes.
And they're some of the things that introverts are particularly good at.
Absolutely.
So there's something really powerful here. And where I start is helping people own their introversion without apology, without shame. And I could go into a whole thing from Brené Brown about that. You know, there is no shame in being an introvert, but what we need to do is we need to stand up to the bias in the same way that we're standing up to every other kind of bias in the world. We need to stand up for this, but because we're quiet, it takes a bit more effort. Yes. But we need to do it for the 50% of talent that's being left on the table because we're not enabling them to reach their potential. So the first thing for me is about helping people understand that difference, helping them own their introversion and see the true gift that it is rather than the handicap that some people think it is. And then it's about helping them find their strengths, their true strengths. And I'm a big fan of the kind of work around positive psychology here when it comes to this, that a strength is not something you're good at, it's something you're good at and you love doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Because a strength is something that I can do to a consistently high standard over a long period of time. There are plenty of things that I'm really good at and I don't like them, which means if I'm in the right mood, I can do them. But if I'm not going to be consistently a high performer at it.
Yes.
And so many times, I think in life and in business, people are told what their strengths are because someone's making commentary about what you're good at. That doesn't make it the same as a strength.
Correct.
So for me, it's about helping people really own their strengths and then articulate them clearly and positively. So I remember, and you may recognize this as well, so many times being either asked the question or hearing the commentary, you're so quiet, are you okay? You don't say very much, do you? Yeah, I can see you nodding. And in the past, I would have mumbled an apology to that. Not now. So now I say, thank you for noticing. You know, as an introvert, one of my absolute strengths and gifts is really being able to listen to what people are saying and assimilate ideas. And so the way I do that is by really being quiet and listening and contributing when I have something of value to add. So thank you for noticing. I really appreciate that.
That is brilliant. Yes.
And it makes such a difference so rather than the mumbled apology that would have compounded that thing about there's something wrong with me. Oh, no, there's not. Just watch me. And it's so important that in helping introverts find their path, whether that's as an entrepreneur, whether that's in business, whether it's in their family and their relationships, it's actually about them really finding those strengths, articulating them positively so that they can then play to their strengths fairly consistently. And that, for me, is the big way in which I help people find their path. I'm helping them own their introverted skin.
I tell you what, Joanna, that is what you're doing is light and life. You are shining unapologetically. You know, those figures you've thrown out, I'd never thought to research, what percentage of, the UK or the US is, are actually introverts. And I was too busy most of my life wearing masks, like you were saying, pretending to be an extrovert by nature when I was not. Because of all of those boxes that people try to place us into. To make them feel better.
Exactly.
To normalize the environment or the conversation, which is, I believe, our very huge problem in the world now, where the reason we're having all of these conflicts and we're trying to control someone else's life and choices and you name it, right? It's because there's something in us that we're not happy with. We don't love the skin we're in, so, a lot of people have not looked inward, which introverts do. I love how you pointed that out. And they're too busy playing to the masses or to the social conditioning, social cultural conditioning that has been programmed into our lives through family, education, religion, you name it.
Absolutely.
So how do you help your folks break through that?
We start by looking at limiting beliefs, actually, because so often the years or decades of being told has got those limiting beliefs firmly entrenched in their minds.
Yes.
So I have a process where I help them flip their limiting beliefs. And what we help them do is find liberating beliefs that are grounded in reality. Because you can't just say, I don't know, if my limiting belief is I'm no good at presentations, a liberating belief is not, I'm great at presentations. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. But a liberating belief that's grounded in reality starts with, actually, I take care to be of service to my audience. So when I'm presenting, I may have a slower pace. I may be more measured, more considered. And that's because what I'm doing is I'm enabling the audience to connect with and engage with my content. It's not the big me show. This is about helping them connect and go on their own journey as I'm talking. So that's what makes me a great presenter. And that's why that's grounded in reality. So helping people flip those beliefs to something that really works. And then we do a little bit of work that is most common with addiction work, actually, which is a bit of relapse prevention, which is having found this new liberating belief. What are the circumstances, the situations, or the people that are going to have me scurry back into that old limiting belief? And let's put a strategy in place now so that rather than get there and go, now what am I going to do? We've already got all of that covered. We know which box we're going to open and which strategy we're going to wheel out. And it's like, I've got that. And as we're doing that, you can see the confidence in people grow. It's just beautiful work.
Sounds like it. And if you're like me, which, I feel a kindred spirit across the pond, we love that. I mean, it's light and life to us, to see the transformation in others and just that revelation, after they, and then they move into that reconciliation piece, and then it's like their rebirth, their renaissance, and they finally come to, what I call the true you, their authentic self, and just own and embrace it. Oh, absolutely, absolutely beautiful.
And that authenticity is so important. And I think many introverts may end up feeling a bit of guilt or shame because they realize they've been compromising who they are in order to fit in order to satisfy this extrovert ideal, which is a nonsense anyway. So when we release them from that and enable them to be their authentic self, it is like, either the butterfly emerging. The analogy I use is the dragonfly rather than the butterfly, because the dragonfly typically sheds its skin at least 7 times, depending on its specific species. Wow. So it's not just one big mush and then here I come out beautiful. Yes. It's like shed a skin, shed a skin, shed a skin, grow a bit more, shed a skin, grow a bit more, until ultimately I reach my kind of dragonfly outcome.
Oh, I love that.
And for me, that ties in with my approach working with people is a kind of marginal gain approach, a bit like David Brailsford did with his, Olympic cycling team. Transformations don't have to be earth-shattering. Transformational change can be those little things that we do and embed and then improve on, and just those incremental changes. And that's, for me, the dragonfly analogy. Let's make an incremental change. Let's stick. Let's make sure we hold on to it before we make the next one, So the other thing that I've realized working with introverts is that don't push us outside our comfort zones. I tire of how many people say, nothing good happens in your comfort zone. If you want to do anything, get out of your comfort zone. Well, Yeah, for some people that may work really well. The majority of introverts I've worked with, if they're thrown out of their comfort zone, they get scared, things go wrong, they come scurrying back in, probably never to see outside that comfort zone again. So what we do is that we actually get them to map their comfort zone so that they know what's deep at the heart, what's at the outer edge, what's just beyond that outer edge, and what's way out there.
Yes.
And then what we do bit by bit is move them to that outer edge and just beyond, because every time we do that, we're expanding their comfort zone until they look back over a 12-week program or whatever we've done and can't believe how far they've moved, because none of it felt scary. None of it was a real threat. None of it had them retreat. They coped and managed with it all beautifully.
Oh, that is brilliant. So you're helping to slowly shift their perspective and allowing them to get comfortable according to their schedule, their, feeling, their emotion, their progress. I love it. I love it.
Thank you. I love it too. And that's why I should be doing this until I turn my toes up, Dr. V. I really will.
And with the passion that exudes from you, I have no doubt that you will. But let's not hasten that.
But it does point to what I have as one of my mantras, which is purpose plus passion trumps fear.
Yes.
And, there's nothing wrong with feeling fear, but what we need to do is find a way through and past it. Feel it by all means, but don't let it have us stuck. And for me, it's purpose and passion that moves me past that.
Absolutely. I tell you that I recognize the kindred spirit, the kindred soul, because I talk all the time about purpose, identifying your passion and walking toward and finding your soul purpose and embracing your fear. Because when you do that, it becomes your ally. And I love how you slowly progress the introverts into embracing the fears, and they don't even realize it.
No.
It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
So I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I would love for my audience to continue to hear from you. But before we tell them how to continue hearing from you and how to connect with you, please, what is on your heart to share with them? What advice, guidance, saying, what would you like to share or leave the audience with?
I think there's two things. One is that if you're an introvert, know that you are absolutely okay. You are enough. Yes. And just by really owning your introversion, you will start that journey to flourishing, because flourishing is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't get there and go, that's it, I'm done, I'm flourished. It's a choice we make every day, every moment of every day. And if you're not an introvert, but you know introverts, and you're now recognizing that perhaps some of the people dear to you, close to you in your life are introverts, understand. Don't say, actually, you need to go to more family things. You need to get out more. You need to do more. No, understand and talk with each other about what each of you needs. Then you'll start to understand where those differences are, and you'll be happier as a result.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Joanna, thank you so much for being our spotlight today.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You just left us with so much to think about, so many diamonds, nuggets, wisdom. Thank you. Audience, I want you to be sure to follow Joanna Rawbone on social media or connect. Joanna, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The one-stop shop almost is my website, which is flourishingintroverts.com. There you'll find my TEDx talk, my podcast, my TV show, my occasional musings, any courses. There's lots of freebies there. There's a quiz that helps you understand your type of introversion, because there are 6 different types and many blends. So everything you can find there.
Excellent, folks. Follow Joanna. Go to her website. There's a ton for you to dive into. You'll be able to read her full bio and connect with her also from the Define Your Path podcast platform. And as always, be sure to visit our virtual home to see what we're up to at Defining Paths. You can reach us at definingpaths.online. PATHS.online. I am Doc V, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Folks, be true to you. define your path, and you will be transformed to be your own boss in mind, body, soul, and business. We'll see you on our next episode. And again, Joanna, thank you so much. You have been such a gift.
Thank you.